And now let's just do a little bit of our mapping project. And we have this rather complex little polyline, and we want it, and it is currently, look at the properties box, all at elevation 0 as promised. And it's not closed, right? It's just a regular old polyline. And what I'd like to do is map this to the surface. So as I make it a feature line, I'm going to use create from objects. And we're going to go into that same working site for now, since we want to talk in there. And we'll use the same style that we did before. We'll let it just go to the default layer. And now I can decide what I want to do. Do I want to erase the 2D polyline work? Well, yes, maybe no. We're going to erase it for now just to eliminate it. And I'd like to assign elevations to it while I do so. And if it's very complicated, I may want to weed things, right? We're just going to assign elevations to it for now and say OK. And it's going to say, where do I want to get them? So I can do a bunch of work here while I do it. A couple of things you got to watch out for. I can grab intermediate grade breakpoints. What that means is there are triangles that sit in the surface between all the points in the surface, and as my polyline crosses, it would actually pick up those intermediate grade points. If I got a lot of triangles, you get a whole bunch of extra stuff inside your feature line you don't want. So most of the time you want that off, but sometimes it's really handy. So we're going to map from that surface. Is that the surface I want to map from? No, I don't want the existing ground. I want the parking lot. Okay, so what I'm doing now is assigning elevations to my 2D polyline based on that 1.5% slope that we created in the grading group. Pretty nifty. And viewer will show back up. And I end up with, it converts, goes to my road line layer, but still looks like a grading line. Okay, so this is once again style driven. It has a whole bunch of points, and you will see it pulls out the elevations based on those locations. And so now I have an editable beast. I can turn it on and off if I have those intermediate points and you pulled them. This will actually show the grade breaks. I can move this up and down by default. I'd like to do a quick profile here, and it wants to know what surfaces, so this will actually map the existing grade, which will be very simple, what profile style I want to use for the existing, makes sense. My new one, I want to be a different color, so we'll just make it layout. And what profile view, ship a whole bunch of them with Jumpstart. We'll just use out majors, and I do not want to draw the 3D stuff. And this makes a temporary profile so I can actually see what's going on. There's my proposed, and there's my existing. Right, so I can see how they actually map as they go across. So if I have to do make a close match, I can do so, and you'll see that we are actually changing. We can delete out of this profile. We can actually delete some of the points and resample it and put vertical curves in it. Do all kinds of cool stuff in my design profile, and this is all a temporary object, and because I made it as a quick profile, and it will, next time I open and close the drawing, it won't be there. I'm just going to delete it for now. Helpful little tool for our purposes here. We can actually visually edit what's going on in here by changing grade heads. If you pick, let's see where it started. Right, so it would also be possible to, perhaps I would like to reverse this, and since it's a feature line, I could do that. So I'm going to close out of this for a sec and say, I'd really like to start out from on the street, so I'd like to reverse that feature line. And now when I go back to the editor, you can see as I pick my first station, my little triangle shows up right there. And so as I could work my way down here, and what I like to do is I'm going down about 1.5%. That's great. Coming around this corner here, right? It's nearly flat as I make the corner, and I'd like that to be a 1% grade going up that way. So I go 1% to the next, right? And now we're coming around the corner. I'm going to leave that as a 1% grade as we go around the corner. So I can continue to play with it that way. So you have pretty nice tools to map this. This feature line itself can actually be added to our surface that's a temporary surface. Just to make that point, right? Since the surface has properties, and part of those properties are definitions, right? It will tell you where the data came from. So even the temporary surfaces will take break lines. So I can add, and we'll just call it curb here as a break line, and I can weed supplement as I do, which is pretty cool. So I can make sure that I fill things in, right? We'll leave weeds, and we'll leave weeds at 10 and put them in at 15 so you sample a little more of between what we got, and that surface is now affecting the surface since they're very closely mapped, and it should be. It shouldn't affect it dramatically, but if I pick the elevation editor, and change my increment and just make it 2 feet and raise all the elevations, right, by 2 feet, you can see the surface modifies itself, right, in the background. So extremely dynamic, and the more of the dynamic stuff you throw in there, right, you better make sure you're backing up. A couple of little tricks when you're starting to make a lot of changes to a temporary surface like this. You may want to take off this rebuild automatic. So you can add the stuff in and then do a manual rebuild of your surface. That's particularly important since you don't want, if you're going to be adding multiple feature lines at once to your surface, in the same way you'd use your 3D polylines as break lines in a surface in LDT, you might not want the surface to update constantly as you do it. And so once again, rebuild automatic in general you probably want off. You just got to remember to rebuild your surfaces, and it's a good habit to turn rebuild automatic back on when you save and exit your drawing.